In 1944, British intelligence built an entire army out of air. Thousands of tanks, guns, and camps, none of them real. But here's the twist. Hitler believed every single one. Across the English countryside, Hitler's spies watched in disbelief. Hundreds of British tanks seemed to assemble, forming what looked like the largest invasion force in history. But there was one problem. Those tanks weren't real. They were inflatable, and Winston Churchill, the bulldog of Britain, had personally greenlit the creation of more than 10,000 inflatable tanks, trucks, and even fake landing craft. This wasn't madness. It was one of the most brilliant deceptions of World War II. A plan so clever it made Hitler believe the Allies would strike one place, while the real invasion was headed somewhere else entirely. A deception that helped save D-Day. So how did Britain convince the Nazi high command with nothing but rubber paint and a few clever tricks? And why did Churchill believe that air-filled armor could win a real war? Stay with me, because the truth behind the Ghost Army will make you question everything you thought you knew about D-Day. By early 1944, the Allies faced a massive problem. They were preparing for Operation Overlord, the invasion of Nazi-occupied Europe. The plan was simple: land on the beaches of Normandy, France. But success hinged on one thing: surprise. If Hitler guessed where the Allies would strike, he could unleash his tanks, planes, and elite divisions. Tens of thousands of Allied soldiers could die before they even reached the shore. So, how do you fool one of the most paranoid dictators in history? You make him believe something that isn't true so convincingly that he can't afford to ignore it. Now that might sound simple until you remember you're trying to lie to a man with one of the largest intelligence networks in the world. It's like bluffing in poker while your opponent has the deck, the dealer, and your diary. To deceive Hitler, British intelligence launched a secret operation so clever that even many of their own generals weren't fully aware of it. It was called Operation Fortitude, a masterclass in deception divided into two parts. Fortitude North, designed to suggest an invasion of Norway. Fortitude South, the one that truly mattered, to convince Hitler that the real attack would strike Pas de Calais, the narrowest point between Britain and France. And that's where Churchill's inflatable army came in. Early 1944, the English countryside buzzing with activity. Soldiers marching, tanks rolling, trucks rumbling down dusty lanes. From the air, German reconnaissance planes snapped photos of what seemed like a massive military buildup near Dover. But if you stepped into one of those camps, you'd hear the hiss of air pumps and see soldiers rolling out sheets of rubber. They weren't engineers. They were artists, designers, and sound technicians. Their mission? To create an illusion of an invasion force so convincing it could fool the enemy's eyes, ears, and spies alike. The mastermind behind it all was the British Deception Unit, working alongside the U.S. 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, a top-secret unit later nicknamed the Ghost Army. They built dummy airfields, complete with inflatable planes. They laid out fake supply depots with empty oil drums and wooden crates. And most famously, they manufactured 10,000 inflatable Sherman tanks, light enough for 4 men to lift, but realistic enough to fool enemy pilots. You could literally pick one up, carry it under your arm, and set it down in a new position before lunch. If Instagram existed in 1944, these guys would have been the kings of Photoshop, except they weren't editing photos. They were editing reality. But make no mistake, this wasn't just theater, it was deadly serious. Every fake tank, every phantom convoy, every misleading radio transmission had one goal: to make Hitler believe that General George S. Patton, the Allies' most aggressive commander, was preparing to invade at Pas de Calais. Patton became the perfect decoy. Even though he had been sidelined for slapping a soldier, the Germans still saw him as the Allies' most dangerous general. To them, if Patton was in Kent, the invasion had to be headed for Calais. So the Allies fed the illusion: fake radio chatter, bogus military orders, even actors posing as officers in pubs, deliberately leaking gossip for German spies to overhear. And it worked. By May 1944, Hitler was convinced the real invasion would strike Calais, not Normandy. But the deception had to hold for months. One slip, one spy discovering the truth, and the entire D-Day invasion could collapse before it even began. Then came a moment that nearly exposed everything. In late May, German reconnaissance captured a series of photographs showing something unusual. Tanks that looked slightly off, shadows that didn't match, an entire airfield that seemed to have moved overnight. Had Hitler discovered the ruse? The photos were rushed to German intelligence analysts in Berlin. They compared them to earlier shots, looking for inconsistencies. But instead of doubting what they saw, they drew the wrong conclusion. They believed the Allies were increasing their buildup at Calais, proof that the invasion would strike there. In other words, the flaws in the deception actually reinforced the lie. It was psychological warfare at its finest. On June 6, 1944, D-Day, as Allied forces stormed the beaches of Normandy, Hitler refused to release his panzer divisions stationed near Calais. He was waiting for what he believed was the real invasion. For 7 crucial weeks, those divisions sat idle, while Allied troops broke through Nazi defenses, captured vital ports, and secured their foothold in Europe. By the time Hitler realized he'd been tricked, it was too late. The war had already turned. So yes, the might of Nazi Germany was delayed by inflatable tanks and a bit of British imagination. You could say the war's deadliest weapon turned out to be a giant balloon. The Ghost Army's mission remained classified for decades. Only in recent years did the world learn about these soldiers, artists, architects, sound engineers, who fought not with bullets, but with illusions. Their success reminds us that war isn't just about force, it's about mind games. The Allies didn't just outgun Hitler, they outthought him. And Churchill, the man who ordered it all, understood something timeless. Sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't what you can see, it's what your enemy believes is real. But here's the twist. The inflatable army didn't disappear after D-Day. A secret U.S. Ghost Army unit carried this deception all the way to the Rhine, creating entire fake divisions to mislead the Nazis right up until the war's end. So, if one army of air could change the course of World War II, what else might we never know about the illusions of war? If this story surprised you, wait until you hear how a handful of British magicians used the same tricks to protect their cities from Nazi bombers. Subscribe now so you don't miss the next secret chapter of World War II that history almost forgot. Because sometimes the greatest battles are fought in the shadows.